the first time that such an event is combined also with the Sustainable Mobility and Intelligent Transport Conference. So CIrClE 2019, that we were together in Crete, has been upgraded because we have considered that electromobility now takes a huge part in what we call circular economy. We are implementing at the moment a lot of projects that are dealing with electromobility. But in fact, all those projects sometimes remain only pilots, or they don't go to the next level. Mm. Why do you think is that? Or how can we deal with that? Can those projects go a step further? Can they be implemented in a bigger scale? Can they be more sustainable? Can, for example, the electromobility in Greece or in Cyprus, which is non-existent, or very few, can go a little bit more advanced? What do you think about this?
Certainly we have good opportunities now in the Commission funding, but also we have a change of times. If you would have done this 10 years ago, it would be difficult, but now everybody wants to become green. Not only on the mainland, also on the islands, as we see in this conference. There is a holistic approach anyway on the islands, particularly important: transport, energy, waste, and water. Transport is a very important element, particularly for the islands, because everything is transported. There are many islands who don't have their waste dump, so the waste has to be transported to the mainland. The water has to come from the mainland because they have no fountain, or in summer they have too many people, the tourists, they have not enough water. So you can, and also the tourists are coming. There's a lot of movements. So transport in the sea, the ships, but also on the land becomes more and more important because tourism is also growing. So not only we have the old problem, we are increasing the problems through the numbers of people on islands now. So there is, for islands, even a stronger need to move to alternative fuels, of which one is electromobility, but there are others. There is, for instance, LNG for ships. We should not neglect this. Also, LNG can be produced from waste by treating the waste to do biogas. This can be then used in transport. So transport is like the spider's web, has the connections to all the other fields, and that's why it is becoming so important these days. Everybody realizes this, so that's why sustainable transport and moving to alternative fuels becomes so important in our times.
Two questions: money and legal barriers.
Yes. Now, how to move? Now we agreed, or we found out why everybody is now looking at mobility and sustainable mobility. Well, there was, of course, also the Paris Agreement, and there were targets set how that mobility and other fields have to become greener. They were looking at the CO2 production, right? So until 2050, there has to be zero. Yeah? So, and then since transport has 1/3, obviously the target applies very strongly also to transport. Now that was the target. Now the means, how to finance this, as we found out in the conference, was clearly said: public money will not be sufficient. I think we understand this, or only a few lucky ones, lucky cities, lucky islands will get enough money to do the transition. So obviously we have to bring in private capital. That's easier said than done, because private capital, if you're in a democracy, the people who own the money decide. So you cannot force them. So you have to make it in a way attractive. And at the end, they don't want to lose their money. They want to even to have a profit, which is not helpful, but this is the thing. So we need a recipe to go from research and demos, where we are very good in Europe. We have a big funding program also at EU level, but also nationally. We have a lot of money we're investing in research, which is good. But we are not as good as many other regions in the world that these researched solutions go to the market. But only if they go to the market, we earn, or we can make a mass impact on the market. Now, how to organize this? So when we fund through research funding, research and what I call demos, where in a demo you show that things work in principle, but you have not looked at the cost so much. You sold, as I always say, some pieces to your favorite town hall, which is nice, and you show that it's working, okay? Now, from that point, the demo, how I call it, to the market, there is still a gap, because the market will demand cheap solutions. That means if you have not looked at costs before, you are far away from that cheap solution. Now, in research, they call it the valley of death. Yeah? Because what they see, they fund research, they fund demos, and when the funding, the grants expire, because the contract has to end at one stage, then all these projects go bankrupt, or they finish. They finish. Well, it stops. This is not good. So we have in the CEF found a little solution on this. We call these studies with integrated deployment, where you start from the demo, and we try to push you to the break-even of costs and revenue. The break-even, the financial break-even. We try to push you up there, and each project we ask them to do a dual optimization. They have to write this already in their proposal that they're going to do is a dual optimization. First optimization on the technology to bring unit costs down. So little by little over the time of the contract, 2 or 3 years, they bring the costs down, the unit costs down. And at the same time, equally important, they optimize the business-client relation, which means they introduce a billing system, IT system to write bills. They start charging the client little by little, not the full price, but you have to start charging. If you don't start charging, if you don't send bills, you never become viable. That's obvious. Huh? And when you have then, at the end of these projects, one of the mandatory deliverable, otherwise you don't get paid, is to present, based on the optimization and good practice learned, you propose a business plan for the rollout scenario, right? You can see already, business plan is a legal requirement in the contract, so they have to deliver this, and they do. With this business plan, of course, you have a good chance, or better chance, to go to the bank to get a loan than if you come with just PowerPoint presentation and paper. So with this kind of business plan, and also you can show the bank manager, you can show already your pilot operation, which has not only the technology, but also the billing included. And then you have a bigger chance to get a loan. Now, we have done this already since 10 years, and it was very difficult to convince these rollouts still that people go from the real-life trial or the study with integrated deployment to the full rollout, to the full loan. This happened only in exceptional cases, like when they were buying hydrogen buses or electric buses for a town like Paris or Berlin or Riga. Why? Because the risk was covered by the mayor, and Paris cannot go bankrupt. So that's why the banks, they look at this, they look at the risk. They gave, in these exceptional cases, big loans to buy rollouts for buses, even to cities who only did a trial and they were, not viable. Because who believed that Paris can go bankrupt? So that's why you have to understand this from the bank point of view. They want to recover their loan in case there's a problem. Now, we've seen this, and that's why we invented in the Commission and in the CEF program the blending call. The blending call realizes that many of the real-life trials maybe just touch the break-even or a little below or a little above is still not good enough for the bank to give the loan full, 100%. So that's why we give a 20% grant on top. This 20% is like an insurance in mathematics terms. It is for the bank, in case there's bankruptcy, to recover their loan. Because they can take the assets, which of course the stations is assets, and then they recover, and then the 20% grant is lost. This has really triggered an enormous success. To give you the figures, in the 10 years, or since 2010 we did the first call with the trials, we have funded 120 real-life trials. Average funding is 9 million. Total project size, because we pay 50%, is 18 million. So we have spent roughly $500 million on the trials. 120 in all fuels, in all alternative fuels. LNG, CNG, battery electric, and hydrogen electric, how I call it. It's hydrogen electric and not pure hydrogen, you know that. So we funded these trials. And now, in a single call, Mrs. Bulc, our commissioner, gave us enough money to have $500 million in a single blending call for innovation. And believe it or not, this money was all taken up, and we have an investment. The trials joined forces, and then they presented a rollout scenario in this call, in this blending call, and with the 20% on top, the bank was willing to give 80% loan. And we're seeing now the rollout of alternative fuels across Europe with these very large calls. It was 2017 the call, we had 2 deadlines, and all the contracts have been concluded beginning of this year. And we are not only putting a few stations ultra-charging or hydrogen, we are putting thousands. And we are building them now up in the next years, yes. So the stations are there, but where are the cars? This we could not fund because we are an infrastructure program. We had not the mandate. We gave some money to vehicles, ships, and so on, but this is minor because we are funding infrastructure mainly. But yeah, but this recipe to give the blending, we will continue to do this even more in the next framework program. And in this respect, we're further developing this. We are constantly developing this tool. Now we are has just been positively voted in the committee on Monday this week, the new blending facility. This replaces the blending call because it has 2 major advantages. The first advantage is the evaluation is done in half a year. Before we needed 2 years. Because before in the blending call, you had to go to the bank. They were analyzing your project. They were giving you a letter of support in case you get a loan. Then you had to bring the project to the commission, to us, and we were looking if you can get the grant. And then you had to go back to the bank. And then they did financial closure. This was a very long process, taking up to 2 years. The blending facility does all this in, the colleagues say 5 months, let's say half a year. Okay, let's add months, let's say half a year. So this reduces the time a lot. Why? Because you go to the bank, they do the technical and financial evaluation, and then they send us a short list, and only we do a political decision. We don't evaluate again, which we did before. Our agency did another technical evaluation and a financial evaluation. This is now, you can see also we reduced bureaucracy. We have basically, no, triple, because then they had to go back to the bank. And since it's more than a year ago, they did again an evaluation because they were not sure that things are still the same, because they're careful, the banks. Anyway, so with this system, we are trying now to reduce the time span. Yes? And we have initially put 300 million, but now through Brexit it's going to be reduced to 200 million as a starting point. But now we can add more budget, we can top it up. This is legal base that we can top it up. So we are launching this. Once it has been now adopted in a few weeks of time, the Commission has to adopt. Member States have agreed. Now it has to be published. And I expect this to be in May. So May, June, we will start this. And another big advantage is it's an open call. So there are no deadlines until the budget is expired. And the good news is only innovation and ERTMS is eligible, meaning for the islands who now want to move to alternative fuels is a unique opportunity. Because, just to say this, because since 1 year I'm working on the file for Ireland, and I have some influence still, so I was proposing into the hierarchy, I was sending reports, and I say that there's a real need for islands, and we have neglected. We should have a strategy, not just fund when they come, but have a strategy. So this was taken on board, so that we have now the call, which is open now, is on the comprehensive network, and also the blending facility will be on the core and comprehensive network. This means all the islands which have only comprehensive network node ports can come on board. So I think this is quite good news.
Excellent. So funding solved.
Well, for transport.
For transport. What about legal barriers that there are?
Yeah, legal barriers. Everybody is complaining the Commission should do more rules but then when we do more rules, we're criticized. I don't know. With this 10T program and CEF, there's one disadvantage and one very big advantage. The disadvantage is under 10T, because that's the legal base, when you send a proposal in, you need a signature of your minister, of your ministry. Okay, many people don't like this because you have to go to the ministry, is an extra complication. But there are two very big advantages. First of all, we name you the person to go to. This is normally the representative in our committee. So they know all the details. They can help you prepare your proposal first, having also the national dimension in mind. And on top of that, when you become successful, you are very close to the minister's heart because you are the innovation they always ask for, and you have involving private capital. So if you have a problem nationally, they will help you. Right? So this is a very big advantage. But we are working on directives, if this was your question. We have, of course, passed the directive on alternative fuel infrastructure. You know this. We have done this in 2014. That was published in parallel, so which sets the standards. That means that not everybody invents his own plug and you know these kind of things. That we have a standardization first of all, and also we asked member states to give their input in form maps of the minimum coverage of alternative infrastructure, alternative fuel infrastructure. So we asked Greece, we asked Spain, we asked France, how many stations do you need, how far apart they should be, where they should be situated. So we're actually asking the national planning to implement the alternative fuel infrastructure, the minimum. So that, I mean, in the end, industry will decide how many they put, but we have to start with the minimum. If there's no minimum, there will be nobody wanting to buy anything of the alternative vehicles. Ships, we fund ships, we fund trains, we fund LNG, CNG. I think for Greece, very interesting is LNG, CNG and LNG. Cyprus, by the way, they won one of the most prestigious contracts, as I pointed out in one of my presentations, not today, but another time. In the CIrClE, where there were only 7 projects selected, Cyprus won one of these prestigious projects, combining energy and transport networks in one proposal. We had 2 budget lines from the Commission coming together, breaking up silos. This was a very interesting synergy project, and Cyprus won one of those. Another one, by the way, Malta won, and the other 5 went to the mainland. So we cannot say that islands are not successful, but of course we could do better. Also in the next framework program, in the CEF, synergy will have a big part. So it will be easier to apply multi-sectoral in the CEF. That means energy, transport, and IT, ICT. Don't neglect ICT. You need good telematics communications also on the islands to take part in the transition to the new economy.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. It's an honor.
It's a great honor for me also to have come again to Cyprus. It's my second time, and I appreciate the hospitality, the friendliness, and the nice environment, and we will help you preserve it.
Thank you so much.